Deep underground, we find a worm burrowing through the soil in search of a new home. Not a worm, a worm. A powerful and ancient being that desires to be worshipped as a god. I guess we don't know if worms also want to become gods. Maybe they do. Eventually, this spiky sausage arrived in a land called Hollow Nest, where, after seeing how different he looked from all the other bugs, he emerged from his former body in a much more culturally appropriate form. You see, the bugs in Hollow Nest desire higher beings to worship and give their life meaning, and because of the former worm's suitably crown-shaped head, he was a great fit to be their new king. The Pale King used his godly powers to expand the minds of all of his followers, leading them to build advanced civilizations in Hollow Nest. Eventually, his charisma and influence spread so far that those who worshipped other gods began to change deities. Not wanting to be forgotten, the higher being of the Moth tribe, called the Radiance, began exerting her powers through the bugs' dreams, leading them to madness, and giving them an infection dubbed the Infection. So the Pale King and his tree wife got busy creating an offspring that could be a Hollow Knight, a warrior void of emotion that they could seal the radiance inside of. And the king also used an actual substance called Void in the creation of these vessels, which the Radiance is not a huge fan of, because, you know, light, dark, is really not that difficult of a concept. After tossing dozens of eggs into a void-infested abyss, one vessel rose above the rest, and was chosen by the Pale King to be the pure vessel to seal the radiance inside of. Then the king sealed his son in a temple with a giant egg blocking the entrance that was double locked with a magical seal, which required getting the help of 3 bugs that would agree to fall into an eternal slumber to form a magical seal on the egg. One of the dreamers, the queen of a spider tribe called the Weavers, only agreed if the Pale King gave her a daughter, and he was like, well, what's one more child? I've got like 500 of them chilling in a hole somewhere. And so another child was born, who isn't really that important to the story, I just thought I'd mention it. However, the so-called pure vessel was not as pure and void of emotions as originally intended, and the Radiance used that crack in their armor to regain control and exude her influence over the dreams of the bugs once again, driving them to insanity, and the once thriving kingdom collapsed into mayhem. The Pale King was like, this is not what I signed up for when I burrowed here. So he and his tree wife disappeared, abandoning the bugs of Hollow Nest. Sometime later, after hearing a call from the Radiance, or maybe their trapped sibling, a few of the discarded vessels managed to climb out of the abyss. And while most would not survive in this land of frame-perfect combat, this one is different, because I control them with my expensive RGB keyboard. The knight journeys through the ruined kingdom, and after being gifted a weapon called the Dream Nail, they're able to enter into another's dream realm, where they proceed to carve up the dreamers, releasing the seal on the black egg. The daughter of the Spider Queen, who's named Hornet, initially opposes the knight on their quest, not because the vessel intends to murder her mother in her sleep, but because she thinks they're not strong enough to stop the Radiance, just like the last vessel. But after a few battles, she warms up to the knight, and even takes him to the empty husk of their father, where they get branded as the King of Hollow Nest. The knight then visits his dad, the corpse, and obtains one half of an item called the King's Soul, and then visits his mom's, who is actually still alive but wrapped up like a burrito, and she gives them the other half. Returning to the abyss, they relive their traumatic backstory, and the King's Soul is transformed into the Void Heart. Now that the knight is branded as a king and dubbed the Lord of the Void, Hornet thinks they're suitable enough to finally swat a moth. But first they must defeat the Hollow Knight. Thankfully, Hornet sticks her unwashed needle into his open wound, giving the knight the opportunity to enter into his dream realm, where the creature of Void breaks out of their shell, and together with their sibling, they destroy the Radiance, allowing the two, along with their other siblings, to return to the Void, with their life purpose complete. While you might think this is the true ending, it's not truly the true ending, because more DLC was released sometime later, where a creature called the Godseeker, which is actually multiple Godseekers sandwiched into a single entity, and they all party inside their little dream realm waiting for a god to show up. Visited Hallow Nest in search of, yeah, you can guess right, it's gods. But she was late to the god party. If the knight enters into her dream realm and proves their strength through like 200 different boss battles, eventually the Godseeker becomes interested in them becoming their new god. But after the knight combines with all their void siblings into a giant scary void entity and shreds the radiance to pieces, they become a little less interested and a little more frightened. However, it's too late as the void given form overtakes the Godseeker's body, and presumably escapes the dream realm to begin their attack on Hollow Nest. But if the Godseeker was gifted a delicate flower that nullifies void, then instead the monster and the Godseeker vanish. Out of sight, out of mind, I guess. But where does the title drop Hollow Knight fit into this ending? They just don't. You can achieve this ending without ever having to crack an egg and kill Hornet's mother. Maybe Hornet fights them? I don't know. Go read a fan fiction if you want to see where that goes. If you want to see a video on Silksong, then let me know in the comments. I was gonna include it anyways, but I also want to make a video on the new Pokemon game. And right now I have like 4 videos that are halfway finished and didn't feel like adding a 5th to the list. Like, I made a Bravely Default video when the Switch 2 released, and it's been days away from being finished, but I got distracted by big monkeys and bugs. If you have any other games or series they'd like to see me cover, then leave it in the comments and let me know. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time.